Judge Simpson is the chief judge of the 14A District Court at the Washtenaw County, Michigan. He became famous for the guy who was driving with a license suspended on a Zoom call, if you guys remember. This is Judge Simpson, and today he faces entitled Karen. This is another real encounter between an entitled doctor acting up with Judge Cedric. She makes an interesting remark. It is better to be a doctor than a lawyer, I guess. Who says that to a judge? And why will he even say abused women are jobless and have nothing to support their family? As you can see, she is a doctor, a nephrologist, and had reported the husband for domestic violence. She's doing her best to get the case dismissed. What she does not realize is that the fact that you are the victim does not give you any of such powers to just withdraw the case, and you have to prove why your case should be dismissed. In a civil case, you can, but not in a criminal case, especially domestic violence. It is entirely up to the state and the judge to determine the merits of the dismissal, that is of the case, or allow it to go to arbitration. But she feels entitled to dismissing the case at all costs because it is her husband. It does not work like that, Karen. The judge can clearly see through it and will not just grant her the dismissal, especially when it has a violence or some sort of abuse to it. The right of the state prosecutor to continue or dismiss it is still with the judge, not the victim. She is clearly upset and probably realized the consequences for domestic abuse could put the husband in jail. Being charged with domestic abuse can lead to serious consequences, both legal and personal, as well as criminal charges. Depending on the severity of the incident, charges can range from misdemeanors to felonies. This could result in fines, probation, or imprisonment. Protective orders, civil consequences, impact on employment, stigma, and social consequences, and I think realizing all of this, she decides to pull it all off, but completely going about it the wrong way. Finally, Judge Simpson was all nice about it, allowed the state prosecutor to come up with some sort of arbitration to help her. Another judge could have made it way worse. Domestic violence is not a mere matter in this country, and it is probably frowned upon by the laws. In our next video, we see another entitled Karen speaking their mind during the COVID pandemic. Public health. It is a legal contract premised on law to protect each other's safety. If you do not care about your own, someone else cares. COVID was no joke, and most laws were, although not constitutional, but necessary to help protect the pandemic. But here we see a woman coming up entitled to never put on a mask, and this was at the height of the pandemic. Can you believe what she just said? What people should know is the concept of a social contract regarding mask wearing typically revolves around mutual responsibility and public health. While there isn't a formal social contract, many people operate under the idea that wearing masks can help protect others, particularly vulnerable populations, from illness, and it also goes a long way to show community safety, personal responsibility, solidarity, and social respect for each other, especially the elderly who are the most vulnerable. This entitled Karen called 911 excessively while she was caught speeding. She denies her speeding and yells at the officer, resists arrest, and then finally realizes that she will not get her way as usual. She could have just lowered her voice to get a ticket and left to care for her kid, as she claims, but threatened the officer with 911 calls. What she does not realize is that falsely calling 911 is considered a misdemeanor act in so many jurisdictions. It can lead to charges such as making false reports or misuse of emergency services. These actions can divert resources away from the genuine emergencies rather than wasting resources on your entitled claims. Resisting arrest is typically a misdemeanor, but it can be charged as a felony in some jurisdictions, especially if it involves violence or threats to officers. If you resist arrest, it may lead to additional charges on top of the original offense, which can result in harsher penalties. Speeding is generally treated as a civil infraction, but can vary in severity depending on whether it is a minor speeding versus extreme speeding. But in her case, it was just a mere minor speeding, which is, if she was not entitled, she would have just been cited with a traffic citation and called it a day, but not with entitled Karen. And in the video, you can tell the supervisor was quite nice about the whole process, because to threaten an officer with a 911 call just for overspeeding is not only well, misuse of 911 calls, but also could come up with a criminal indictment to it. Threatening a law enforcement officer may be classified as either a felony or a misdemeanor, depending on the nature of the threat and state laws. A verbal threat might result in a misdemeanor charge, while threats involving a weapon or intent to cause harm can lead to felony charges. In this case, it was just a verbal threat, but it is still illegal, unlawful, and a misdemeanor charge. You are overspeeding. Just get a ticket and stop threatening to call 911. She was finally charged with resisting an officer, fleeing, and misuse of 911. This video shows how elderly folks think they only have the right to a disabled parking spot. Elderly individuals do have certain rights regarding parking, primarily through accessibility laws and regulations. Many jurisdictions have laws that require a certain number of accessible parking spaces for individuals with disabilities, including elderly people who may have mobility challenges. These spaces are usually marked and closer to a building entrances, and once you display your disability permit in your car, you are good to park. But in these videos, they feel they own the parking spots. Their demeanors and facial expressions tells it all. This continues until the following day. They think they deserve and are so entitled to the parking spot than anybody else, no matter what the reason is, whether they may have a permit to the parking or not. Let's give people a chance and tame ourselves. We do not own this world or anybody. Let's respect other people's opinions, culture, rights, and enjoy this world that God has given us with all the joy instead of feeling entitled. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more.